There comes a moment in life when you finally get tired, not of the world, not of people, but of yourself. Tired of reacting the same way, tired of breaking in the same places, tired of watching life pass by while you stay stuck in patterns that no longer serve you. And that moment, painful as it is not your weakness. It is your awakening. Your personality is not who you truly are. It is what you have learned while trying to survive, belong, and be accepted. From the moment you entered this world, you began absorbing messages, spoken and unspoken, about how to behave, what to hide, what to fear, and what to chase. You learned when to speak and when to stay silent. You learned how to protect yourself from disappointment, rejection, and pain. Over time, these lessons settled into habits, and those habits started looking like who you are, even though they were never your essence. Think about the parts of yourself you call weaknesses: the overthinking, the people-pleasing, the anger, the withdrawal. None of these were born with you. They were learned responses to situations that once made you feel unsafe or unseen. You became quiet because your voice was ignored. You became strong because you were not allowed to be soft. You became independent because you could not rely on anyone else. These traits were not flaws. They were strategies. They helped you survive a chapter of your life. But survival is not meant to be permanent. It is meant to lead you to growth. The danger begins when we confuse our learned behaviors with our identity. When we say, "This is just how I am," we unknowingly lock ourselves into patterns that no longer serve us. We stop questioning our reactions. We stop challenging our limitations. We carry old armor into new battles where it only weighs us down. Growth requires the courage to admit that what once protected you may now be preventing you from becoming who you are meant to be. You are not your fear of failure. You learned it from moments where trying cost you something. You are not your lack of confidence. You learned it from environments that measured your worth instead of honoring it. You are not your emotional walls. You learned them after trusting the wrong people. When you recognize this, something powerful happens. Shame dissolves. You stop hating yourself for coping the only way you knew how. Compassion replaces judgment, and with compassion comes the strength to change. Unlearning is harder than learning. It requires awareness, patience, and responsibility. It asks you to pause before reacting, to question your inner voice, and to choose differently, even when the old way feels familiar. It means realizing that you can feel fear and still move forward, feel pain and still remain open, feel doubt and still believe in yourself. You are not betraying your past by changing. You are honoring it by refusing to let it define your future. At your core, beneath the layers of conditioning, trauma, and expectations, there is something untouched, a self that is curious, capable, and resilient. When you stop identifying with what you learned and start reconnecting with who you are, life begins to feel lighter. You respond instead of react. You choose instead of repeat. And slowly, gently, you begin to live not as a collection of old lessons, but as a conscious creator of your becoming. Self-awareness is the first act of self-respect because it requires the courage to see yourself clearly, without excuses and without cruelty. Most people spend their lives running from themselves, distracting, blaming, numbing, or pretending. It feels easier to point outward than to look inward. But the moment you pause and truly observe your thoughts, your reactions, your patterns, you are telling yourself, "I matter enough to understand." That decision alone changes the relationship you have with your own life. To be self-aware is not to be perfect. It is to be honest. It is recognizing when your anger is actually hurt, when your silence is fear, and when your confidence is a mask for insecurity. Without awareness, you live on autopilot, repeating the same mistakes while wondering why nothing changes. With awareness, you begin to notice the invisible strings pulling your behavior. You see how past experiences shape present reactions. You understand that your triggers are not enemies. They are messengers asking for attention and healing. Self-respect begins when you stop lying to yourself, when you admit where you are instead of where you wish you were, when you acknowledge your limitations without letting them define you. Awareness does not weaken you, it empowers you. It gives you the ability to respond instead of react, to choose instead of repeat. You stop handing control of your emotions to circumstances and start reclaiming ownership of your inner world. Many people fear self-awareness because they think it will expose their flaws. But what it actually reveals is your humanity. You learn that you are not broken, you are patterned, and patterns can be changed. When you understand why you do what you do, compassion replaces self-criticism. You stop punishing yourself for coping mechanisms that once kept you safe. You thank them, and then you gently release what no longer serves you. Self-awareness also transforms your relationships. When you know your wounds, you stop bleeding on people who did not cut you. You communicate instead of assuming. You listen instead of defending. You recognize when your expectations are unrealistic and when your boundaries are necessary. This clarity creates healthier connections because you are no longer asking others to fill gaps you haven't acknowledged within yourself. Respecting yourself means taking responsibility for your growth. It means noticing when you are shrinking to be liked or performing to be valued. It means catching the moments when you abandon your truth for temporary comfort. Awareness is the quiet voice that says, "This doesn't align with who I want to become." And each time you listen to that voice, you build trust with yourself. Self-awareness is not a destination, it is a practice. Some days you will fall back into old habits. Some days you will react before you reflect. But every time you notice, every time you pause, you are choosing respect over neglect. You are choosing presence over avoidance. And in that choice, you begin to stand taller. Not because life is easy, but because you finally see yourself and you refuse to look away. The way you speak to yourself quietly shapes the way you experience the world. Long before anyone else believes in you or doubts you, your inner dialogue has already decided what feels possible. Every thought you repeat becomes a lens through which you interpret life. When that voice is harsh, fearful, or constantly critical, the world begins to feel heavy, unkind, and limiting. Not because life is against you, but because you are carrying an internal battle everywhere you go. Most of us inherited our inner dialogue without consent. It was formed by early experiences, repeated criticism, unmet emotional needs, and moments when we felt small or unsafe. Over time, these external voices moved inside and began speaking as if they were truth. You learned to question yourself before trying, to expect rejection before connection, and to brace for failure even in moments of success. This internal environment becomes familiar, but familiarity is not the same as health. Healing your inner dialogue does not mean replacing every negative thought with forced positivity. It means becoming aware of the tone you use with yourself and choosing kindness where there was once punishment. When you notice yourself saying, "I'm not good enough," pause and ask, "Who taught me to speak this way?" That moment of awareness interrupts the cycle. You stop attacking yourself for being human and start responding with understanding. As your inner dialogue softens, your outer world responds. You begin to take risks you once avoided, not because fear disappears, but because it no longer controls you. You speak up, set boundaries, and walk away from what drains you. People feel the difference in your presence. You stop seeking constant validation because you are no longer starving for approval. Opportunities that once felt intimidating begin to feel possible, simply because you believe you are allowed to try. The world mirrors the relationship you have with yourself. When your inner voice is supportive, you tolerate less disrespect. When it is encouraging, you persist longer. When it is patient, you give others grace without losing yourself. Healing your self-talk does not change external circumstances overnight, but it changes how you meet them. And that shift changes outcomes. There will be days when the old voice returns, especially during moments of stress or disappointment. Healing is not linear, but each time you choose to speak to yourself with compassion instead of cruelty, you weaken the old narrative. You teach your nervous system that it is safe to be imperfect, safe to rest, safe to grow at your own pace. This safety becomes the foundation for confidence that is steady, not performative. Your inner dialogue is your lifelong companion. It is the one voice you will never escape. When you heal it, you stop living in constant resistance to yourself. Life begins to feel less like a struggle and more like a collaboration. You still face challenges, but you face them with an ally instead of an enemy inside your mind. And when that relationship changes, the world you experience changes with it, subtly, steadily, and profoundly. Pain is unavoidable, but what it becomes in your life is a decision you make again and again, often without realizing it. Every person carries wounds, some visible, some hidden so deeply that even they struggle to name them. Pain arrives through loss, betrayal, failure, rejection, and moments when life does not turn out the way you hoped. It enters quietly or all at once, and it leaves a mark. But pain itself is not the end of your story. It is a turning point. Pain can shape you when you allow it to teach you without hardening your heart. It can deepen your empathy, sharpen your wisdom, and strengthen your resilience. When you sit with your pain instead of running from it, you begin to understand yourself on a deeper level. You learn where you need healing, where you need boundaries, and where you need to grow. Pain has a way of stripping away illusions, showing you what truly matters, and revealing a strength you did not know you possessed. But pain can also shatter you when it becomes your identity. When you replay it endlessly, when you use it as proof that life is unfair or that you are unworthy, it begins to consume you. Unhealed pain leaks into every area of your life. It turns into bitterness, mistrust, anger, or emotional numbness. You start building walls instead of bridges. You protect yourself so much that you forget how to live fully. In trying to avoid being hurt again, you shrink your world. The choice is not about whether pain will happen. It is about what you do with it after it does. You can ask, why did this happen to me? Or you can ask, what is this trying to teach me? One question keeps you trapped in victimhood. The other opens the door to transformation. Choosing growth does not mean denying your pain or pretending it did not hurt. It means honoring it without letting it control you. When pain shapes you, it teaches you patience with yourself and others. It reminds you that everyone is fighting a battle you cannot see. It helps you release expectations that were never realistic and attachments that were never healthy. You begin to understand that healing is not about erasing the past, but about changing your relationship with it. The memory may remain, but its power over you weakens. There will be moments when the weight feels too heavy, when choosing growth feels impossible. In those moments, even surviving is an act of courage. Strength does not always look like moving forward. Sometimes it looks like resting, asking for help, or simply staying present through the discomfort. Each small decision to face your pain instead of avoiding it becomes an act of self-respect. Pain does not define you, but it will influence you whether you are conscious of it or not. When you choose to heal, pain becomes a teacher instead of a prison. It shapes your character instead of breaking your spirit. And in making that choice, again and again, you reclaim your power, turning what hurt you into something that holds you wiser, softer, and unbreakably human. Confidence is not something you wake up with one day. It is something you build slowly through the relationship you have with yourself. At its core, confidence is self-trust. It grows every time you keep a promise to yourself Speak your truth even when your voice shakes, and choose alignment over approval. Without self-trust, confidence becomes fragile, dependent on validation, and easily shaken by criticism. With self-trust, confidence becomes quiet, steady, and deeply rooted. Many people believe confidence comes from success, praise, or perfection. But those things are external and temporary. True confidence is born in the small, often unseen moments. When you show up on days you feel unmotivated, when you set boundaries, even if it disappoints others, when you stop abandoning yourself to keep the peace. Each time you act in your own best interest, you send a message to your mind, I can rely on myself. Over time, that message becomes belief. Self-trust is built through consistency, not intensity. Grand declarations mean nothing if your actions contradict them. Saying you value yourself but tolerating disrespect creates inner conflict. Promising change but avoiding responsibility weakens trust. But when your words and actions align, even in small ways, confidence begins to take shape. You don't need to transform your entire life overnight. You need to do the next right thing and repeat it. There will be moments when you doubt yourself, especially when you step outside familiar patterns. Doubt does not mean you are incapable. It means you are growing. Confidence is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to move forward despite it. Each time you face discomfort, instead of retreating, you reinforce your self-trust. You prove to yourself that you can handle uncertainty, failure, and learning curves. Breaking self-trust often happens quietly. It happens when you ignore your intuition, silence your needs, or compromise your values for temporary comfort. Over time, this creates an internal fracture. You begin seeking reassurance from others because you no longer believe in your own judgment. Rebuilding self-trust requires honesty and forgiveness. You acknowledge where you abandoned yourself without drowning in guilt. You commit to choosing yourself again, gently and consistently. As self-trust strengthens, your confidence becomes less performative and more authentic. You stop needing to prove your worth. You listen more and compare less. You take feedback without collapsing and rejection without self-betrayal. People feel the shift, not because you are louder, but because you are grounded. Your presence carries certainty, not arrogance. Confidence built on self-trust is resilient. It doesn't disappear when plans fail or opinions differ. It adapts, it learns, it stands back up. You begin to understand that even if things don't go as expected, you will be okay because you have your own back. And that belief, the quiet knowing that you can rely on yourself, is what turns confidence from a fleeting feeling into a lifelong foundation. Growth begins the moment you stop explaining your life and start taking responsibility for it. Excuses often sound reasonable, even logical. They protect you from discomfort, from failure, from the risk of being exposed. They give temporary relief, but they quietly steal your power. Every excuse hands control of your future to circumstances, people, or the past. As long as you believe something outside of you is the reason you cannot change, growth remains out of reach. Most excuses are rooted in fear, not laziness. Fear of failing again, fear of judgment, fear of discovering that you are capable of more than you allowed yourself to believe. It feels safer to say, this is just how things are, than to face the uncertainty of trying. But safety is expensive. It costs you your potential. Growth requires discomfort, and excuses exist to keep you comfortable in places that no longer fit who you are becoming. Ending excuses does not mean denying your struggles. Pain, limitations, and responsibilities are real. Acknowledging them is honest. Using them as permanent reasons to stay stuck is not. There is a difference between compassion and self-sabotage. Compassion says, this is hard, and I will move forward anyway. Excuses say, This is hard, so I won't try. One leads to expansion, the other to stagnation. When you release excuses, you reclaim choice. You realize that while you may not control everything that happens to you, you do control how you respond. You may not be responsible for what hurt you, but you are responsible for what you do with that hurt. Growth begins when you stop waiting for perfect conditions and start working with what you have. Imperfect action builds momentum. Waiting builds regret. Ending excuses also requires honesty about your habits. Growth does not come from motivation alone, it comes from discipline shaped by self-respect. It means noticing where you procrastinate, where you avoid accountability, and where you trade long-term growth for short-term comfort. These moments are not reasons to shame yourself. They are opportunities to choose differently. Each time you do, you strengthen your ability to lead your own life. There will be resistance. Letting go of excuses can feel like standing exposed without a shield. But on the other side of that vulnerability is freedom. You stop blaming your past, your circumstances, or other people for the life you are living. You stop waiting to be rescued. You become an active participant in your own becoming. Growth is not loud or dramatic. It often looks like quiet consistency, showing up when no one is watching, making better choices even when old habits call you back, and holding yourself accountable with kindness. When excuses end, clarity begins. You see what needs to be done, and you begin doing it, one step, one choice, one honest moment at a time. And in that commitment to responsibility, you discover a strength that was always there, waiting for you to stop hiding from your own potential. Your attitude is the quiet force that guides the direction of your life long before circumstances change. It shapes how you interpret events, how you respond to challenges, and how long you persist when things become difficult. Two people can experience the same situation and walk away with completely different outcomes, not because of what happened, but because of the attitude they carried into it. Attitude is not about pretending everything is fine. It is about choosing how you face what is real. Life will test you in ways you cannot prepare for. Disappointments will come without warning. People will misunderstand you. Plans will fall apart. In those moments, your attitude becomes your compass. A mindset rooted in helplessness sees every obstacle as proof that life is unfair. A mindset rooted in responsibility sees the same obstacle as information, something to learn from, something to adjust around, something to grow through. The situation may be the same, but the direction you move in is determined by how you perceive it. Attitude influences your actions, and actions compound into outcomes. When your attitude is defeatist, you hesitate, delay, and avoid. You stop trying before you begin. When your attitude is open and resilient, you take responsibility for what is within your control. You attempt, adapt, and persist. Even small shifts in attitude, choosing curiosity over judgment, patience over frustration, effort over excuses, can dramatically alter the course of your life over time. Your attitude also shapes your relationships. When you approach people with bitterness, defensiveness, or expectation, connections become strained. When you approach with openness, accountability, and emotional awareness, relationships deepen. Attitude determines whether you listen to understand or listen to respond, whether you build bridges or walls. The energy you carry into interactions often returns to you, reflected through the behavior of others. Many people wait for life to improve before they adjust their attitude. But attitude is not a reaction to life. It is a decision you make within it. You may not choose your circumstances, but you choose the meaning you assign to them. That meaning influences your emotional state, your confidence, and your willingness to keep going. When you shift from, "Why is this happening to me?" to, "What can this teach me?" the direction of your life subtly changes. Maintaining a constructive attitude does not mean suppressing emotions. You are allowed to feel sadness, anger, and disappointment. The difference lies in whether you stay there or move through them with awareness. A healthy attitude acknowledges pain without letting it become identity. It allows space for healing while still choosing progress. Over time, attitude becomes habit, and habit becomes character. The way you consistently respond to life writes your story. When you choose an attitude of growth, responsibility, and resilience, your life begins to move in a different direction, not all at once, but steadily. You stop being carried by circumstances and start steering yourself forward. And in that quiet shift, you discover that changing your attitude was never about changing life. It was about changing how you live it. Transformation does not begin with drastic action or perfect plans. It begins with a single quiet decision made in the depths of your awareness. The decision that you deserve better. Better does not mean more than others or a life without struggle. It means a life that honors your worth, your effort, and your humanity. The moment you recognize that you are allowed to want more for yourself, something shifts internally, even if nothing outside has changed yet. Many people stay stuck not because they are incapable, but because they have normalized less respect, less joy, less peace. They tell themselves this is just how life is, or this is all they are meant to have. Over time, low expectations become invisible cages. Deciding you deserve better breaks the agreement you made with survival mode. It challenges the belief that you must tolerate what hurts you in order to be accepted or safe. This decision is often born out of exhaustion. You get tired of shrinking, tired of overgiving, tired of silencing your needs. And in that tiredness, clarity emerges. You realize that constantly betraying yourself costs more than any risk that comes with change. Deserving better means you stop negotiating with your own well-being. You begin to listen to the discomfort that once felt inconvenient and recognize it as guidance. When you decide you deserve better, your standards shift. Not because you become demanding, but because you become discerning. You stop settling for relationships that drain you, environments that limit you, and habits that keep you small. You start choosing alignment over familiarity. This choice can feel lonely at first, because growth often requires leaving behind what once felt normal. But discomfort becomes a sign that you are moving forward, not that you are doing something wrong. Transformation is rarely loud. It often looks like quiet boundaries, honest self-reflection, and consistent self-respect. It looks like saying no without over-explaining, resting without guilt, and trying again without punishing yourself for past failures. Each of these choices reinforces the belief that your needs matter. And what you consistently honor begins to shape your reality. There will be moments of doubt. Old patterns will call you back. People may resist the changes they benefit from not making themselves. But when your sense of worth is internal, external resistance loses its power. You stop asking for permission to live differently. You become willing to disappoint others rather than abandon yourself. Transformation is not about becoming someone new. It is about returning to who you were before you learned to accept less than you deserved. When you decide you deserve better, you give yourself the right to grow, to heal, and to evolve. That decision becomes the foundation upon which every meaningful change is built. And from that moment forward, your life begins to respond, not instantly, but inevitably, to the truth you finally chose to believe about yourself. This journey of fixing your personality is not about rejecting who you are. It is about reclaiming who you have always been beneath conditioning, fear, and survival habits. Every realization you've encountered is an invitation to become more aware, more responsible, and more compassionate toward yourself. When you understand that your personality was learned, you give yourself permission to unlearn what no longer serves you. When you choose self-awareness, you choose respect. When you heal your inner dialogue, you change the way life meets you. When you allow pain to shape you instead of shatter you, you turn wounds into wisdom. Confidence grows as you keep your word to yourself. Growth begins when excuses lose their grip. Your attitude steers your life, and transformation starts the moment you decide you are worthy of better. None of these changes require perfection. They require honesty, consistency, and courage. Small choices, repeated daily, quietly reshape your character, and character reshapes destiny. You are not late, you are not broken, you are not stuck, you are in the process of becoming. The power to transform your life has never been outside of you. It has always lived in the way you think, choose, and respond. The moment you commit to doing that inner work, life begins to shift. Not because the world suddenly changes, but because you do. And when you change, everything connected to you must eventually change too.